Please help me welcome JT McCormick to the stage.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it, buddy. So for the last 45 years, I have not lived a fully authentic life. When I was a child, my mother would always tell me, never judge anyone because everyone has a story, and you don't know their story. The problem for me came about, I didn't want you to know my story. I did not want the world to know who I was, who I am. I did not want the world to know that my father was a black pimp, a 1970s pimp and drug dealer. Somewhere along the line, I don't know where our society lost track of itself, but we've glamorized the word pimp. Pimp my ride, pimp my apartment. My father was a pimp. He put women on a street corner, they sold their bodies, and he took every dollar. I also didn't want you to know that my father has 23 children. I'm one of 23. The most he had by one woman was 3. So that lets you know how much he got around. So I also didn't want you to know that one of my half-brothers was actually murdered here in Detroit. They cut off his hands, they shot him in the back of the head, they lit him on fire, and they threw him on the side of the road. You live and die by the drug game. I also didn't want you to know that my mother was an orphan. She was raised in a 1950s institutional orphanage. When she turned 17 years old, they gave her $20, a small suitcase, and they said, good luck to you, there's the world. We know you've never been outside of these walls, but there's the world. So I look at this picture often, and I say to myself, wow, that's a scared 21-year-old girl. And make no mistake, that's a girl. When I look at it, I say, what was she scared of? Was she scared because she had no family? Was she scared because she had no money? Or was she scared because that's an ugly-ass baby that she was holding? But we live in a world now of incredible political correctness. Let me show you how politically incorrect we were back in the 70s. So I don't know if you can see this real well, but I was a welfare baby. I found this bill about 2 years ago in the suitcase that my mother actually left the children's home in. And we had no problem letting you know that not only was I a welfare baby, my mother, MISS, was a single unwed mother. So, welfare baby born to a single unwed mother. Now, if you notice also, the last name is McCormick. I have my mother's last name. Here's a problem. My mother was given that last name in the orphanage. She has no clue why or where it came from. So I walk around today with this last name, no clue where it comes from. I've had people ask me, oh, are you related to the McCormick Spice family? Maybe. No, are you related to McCormick and Schmitz? Possibly. So what I love most about this is when I found it, take a look down here if you can see it. The bill was for $422. Now, I grew up on welfare. We grew up extremely poor. Pretty confident my mom never paid this. So I go into Google and I say to myself, okay, what's $422 in 2018? Find out. So I go get a cashier's check. I make a copy of the bill, and I send it in. I found out that the hospital is still there. Miami Valley Hospital is still there. Now, I don't know that this ever happened, but I got to imagine whoever opened that bill said, damn, 71, a little bit late, aren't you? So, but I was proud. I felt like, okay, I paid my way into the world. So I got a little bit better looking over time. And, but what I didn't want people to know is that I was a mixed race child. See, being mixed race in the 70s was brutal. Black people didn't like me because I was half white. White people didn't like me because I was half black. At times, I had an identity crisis. I had nowhere to fit in. People didn't like me. I was relentlessly called Oreo cookie, zebra, chocolate vanilla swirl, half-breed, and my personal favorite, color confused, as if I had a choice of what color I could pick. So, for me, being mixed race, yeah, it was hard. But what was really hard is watching what my mother went through. I'm going to share two stories with you to show you how things were back in the 70s. We lived in public housing, politically correct word for projects. And one day we're coming home from the bus. My mother didn't learn how to drive till she was 35. We walk up, and our few belongings that we had were on the curb. We're wondering what's going on. I'm looking at my mom. I'm 5 years old. And out of the blue, the landlord comes running out of the apartment building. And he comes up and he gets in my mother's face, and he says, "No nigger lovers can live here." Now I'm 5, and I realized immediately, oh wow, we have no money, no family, and nowhere to go. What are we going to do? To this day, I don't know where we went or what we did, but I do remember picking up one of my small toys and sitting on the curb crying with my mother. The damnedest thing about this, both white people and black people lived in the housing project. They didn't want mixed race people in the housing project. So on another occasion, this is back in the 70s, my mother and I'm 8 years old, we're waiting in line for our allotment of food stamps. And this is back in the 70s. This isn't like today where we've made it a little more convenient to be on welfare where you have a card and no one really knows. This is back when you had paper money. And you stood there and you handed your food stamp and people behind you judged you and they looked at you. It was embarrassing. But each month you had to stand in a line that was 2, 3, 4 hours long. So we're standing in line one time, I'm 8 years old, and there was an older white lady in front of us. She turns around, she looks down at me, she looks at my mother, she looks down at me again, and she turns around and she spits in my mother's face, calls her a nigger lover. And that was harsh, it's bad. But what was so humiliating is we couldn't leave the damn line because we had to stand there for our free food stamps. So she stood there with her mixed-race son, humiliated. And I laugh about it now a little bit because I say to myself, okay, you were in the same broke line we were in. What made you any better than us? So my father, I used to call, my father was like a solar eclipse. You rarely saw him, but when you did, it was a magical thing. And he would pick me up from time to time. And I knew the 3 things that I could guarantee were going to happen when I went with my father. I knew I was going to go collect from prostitutes. I knew there was a high probability that I was going to be sexually molested by one of his prostitutes. But I didn't know always is this going to be another one of those times where my dad's house is raided and I got to watch him walk out in handcuffs? So let me give you a little insight to my father because he wasn't the best influence, but I did learn some lessons from him, some harsh lessons. He has me one weekend, he picks me up, and we're at the grocery store. And for whatever reason, we're on the frozen food section. And a little girl walks by me, and she says, "Hi, JeVon. My name is JeVon. But again, I've not lived a fully authentic life. I never wanted anyone to know my name was JeVon because I knew you were going to judge me." So the little girl walks by, and she says, "Hi, JeVon." I didn't say anything. And I feel this massive blow to the back of my head. I fall down, my face hits the ground, my nose is bleeding. Next thing I know, I'm up against the frozen food section with a forearm in my neck, and my dad's looking at me. He says, look here, I don't care who it is, you show respect and be kind and say hello to everyone. Okay, we just picked up money from prostitutes. I just saw you beat a woman. Hell of a lesson to get from this man. But the damnedest thing happened. To this day, I don't know how many of you in here, I say hello to everyone. Everyone, and it's by way of that lesson. Now, I promise I won't teach my kids the same way, but that lesson held a hell of an impact on me. In fact, I am nicer to service industry people than I am C-suite executives, business owners. Those people have enough people kissing up to them. Service industry people get overlooked. They don't get the respect that they deserve. And in fact, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but just bear with me. How many of you in here have paid $150 for a business dinner or lunch? Come on, don't lie. If you're not raising your hand, you're lying. 250. 500. Okay, watch this. If we all go to a business lunch tonight, dinner, and we pay $250, we leave a 20% tip, that's $50, to the person who brings out our food. They bring out our food. Half the time, if you're at a restaurant that's that expensive, the person who actually took your order is not the person who brought out the food. So the person who took your order is getting the $50 tip. Sometimes it's dispersed amongst everyone, but most times it's not. Here's my ask, and you can look at me and say, JT, whatever, I'm not doing that. Could you please leave $5 for the people who clean our hotel rooms? We sit on the toilets, we lay in the bed, they vacuum, and God knows what else happens in there. $5 will change those people's lives. $5 will allow a single parent to take their child and get ice cream. $5. We leave $50 on a $250 bill. $5 for the person who cleans the toilet that we sit on. Sorry, just had a moment. So with my mother, the first 9 years of my life were pretty good. Yes, we were hungry. Yes, we were poor. We often made the joke, we were so poor, we couldn't afford the O and the R. We were just po. But the damnedest thing I used to laugh, I still laugh at, we never had these four things at the same time. Water, electricity, food, or money. We never had all four. We were always missing one, most cases two. But I was loved. Someone told me they loved me every night. So the first 9 years of my life weren't bad. I was loved. We were poor. We wore bread bags on our feet in Dayton, Ohio. But I was loved. Then all hell broke loose. My mother was facing prison time for welfare fraud. And I was going to be sent off to live with my dad in Houston, Texas. He decided to take the pimp game to Houston, Texas. So I show up in Houston, Texas, 9 years old, to this. My father and his prostitute were living in a weekly rent motel. But they were also living there with my 6-month-old half-sister. 2 days after I get to the motel, my dad and the prostitute say, hey, we'll be back. And they left. And they left me with a 6-month-old baby. I had never been away from my mother for more than a weekend. I had no clue how to change a diaper, how to feed this child. She starts crying. I pick her up. It's okay, I don't know what to do. She's crying more, 10 minutes, she's still crying. Now I'm crying, 15 minutes goes by, and I get frustrated. I threw my sister across the room. And she landed on the couch. The moment she left my hands, I thought to myself, Mother of God, what kind of monster throws a baby? So I run over, I pick her up, I'm holding her, she's screaming, I'm screaming. And one would think that's the worst part of that story. It's not. The worst part is the prostitute shows up. Oh, but she's got a guy with her. Time to do business. She tells me, get out. I take my baby sister, who has on nothing but a diaper, and we walk around that parking lot in Houston in July, sweltering heat and humidity. She's crying, I'm crying, I just want to go home. I miss my mom, I want to go home. So this part is kind of funny. My mother is not going to go to prison. And here's how it happened. The person who was going to prosecute my mother, he liked two things: prostitutes and drugs. Guess where he got his prostitutes and drugs from? My dad. My dad said, if you prosecute her, I'll go public. He said, okay, then she's got to leave the state. So my mother moves to Houston. I'm still living with my dad, and my dad decides, oh, I'm taking the pimp game back to Dayton, Ohio. Here's the problem. He didn't tell my mom. So me, my dad, his prostitute, and now they have 3 children, 2 girls and a little boy, all pack it up in a U-Haul, and we head back to Dayton, Ohio. How many of you have ever seen Forrest Gump? Remember the scene where Jenny's pissed off and she's throwing the shoe at the house and she's losing her mind? This is my Jenny house. Shortly after we get back, my dad decides, you know what, brought the pimp game back to Dayton, but I'm going to take the pimp game to England now. So my dad leaves me with this prostitute and my 3 half-brothers and sisters. The prostitute is a horrific heroin addict. So on a Sunday, she says, hey, I'm going to go get a pack of cigarettes. Okay, great. Nothing new. 2 days turns into 3 days. 3 turns into 5. We're running out of food. I go down to the store. I steal food. I come back, feed my half-brothers and sisters. Well, I'm also noticing, oh, wow, we don't have any more diapers. The 2-year-old, what's he going to do? So I potty trained my 2-year-old brother by sitting him on the toilet, and I said to him, hey, I don't know what to do until something comes out. You're not moving. He cried. He was upset. I'm crying. I'm upset. But this is how it had to be. 5 turns into 7. 7 turns into 9. This woman doesn't come back for 3 weeks. It's February. I'm supposed to be in school. But I'll be damned if I leave my half-brothers and sisters. So she shows up, and of course, my half-brothers and sisters, it's their mom. They're excited. They're like, oh, Mom, Mom. And I stood back, and I hung back a little bit, and I waited for all the excitement to die down. And so, being the 12-year-old there, well, I manned up. I looked at her. I go, where the F have you been? This woman punched me so hard that my ears started bleeding. I fell to the ground. She started kicking, punching me, so on and so forth. I ran away. I got brought back to the house, and the beating the second time was worse than the first. The next day, one of my uncles comes and picks me up, and he takes me to another one of my dad's girlfriend's house. Now, I'm thinking life is good, everything's going to be fine. Oh, but the weekend rolls around, and this woman's an alcoholic, and I'm looking a little too much like my dad right now. So she starts beating me. I'm fed up. I fight back. She calls the police. I go to Juvenile. So I'm going to pause there for a second. If you recall, my mother's still in Texas. My father's in England. No one knows I'm in Juvenile. No one. I'm there for almost 3 months. Corrections officer comes up to me and says, hey, is your name JeVon? I said, yes, ma'am. Real excited. She said, okay. She leaves. I'm like, what was that about? She calls my aunt and she goes, hey, don't you have a nephew named JeVon? She said, yeah. She goes, no one's called, no one's come by, no one's checked on this kid. I don't think anyone knows he's here. My aunt picks me up. She takes me to another one of my aunt's house to stay. In the middle of the night, I hear my aunt and uncle talking, saying they can't afford me. So I take my little suitcase and I go sleep on the bus stop. So I was homeless, no place to go. But I knew I could get a meal if I went to school. So I'd walk in every day with my suitcase, and again, kids are relentless in middle school. I would get teased. This one little boy was just brutal. Well, he had to get beat up too. I went back to Juvenile again. I was in Juvenile 3 different times. My last time there, to this day, I wish I knew how to contact this person. A corrections officer looked at me and he said, if you come back here again, you're going to man prison. Now, I'm 46 years old, and I don't know what the hell it is about man prison that just doesn't sound right. So I said, okay, not going to man prison. Don't want to go there. So I'm going to fast forward here because it's called Long Story Short. And so I ended up being reunited with my mother at the age of 15. I get to San Antonio, Texas, to where she is. Here was the problem. When I showed up, I had been pushed through a school system. I tested on a 5th, 6th grade level. Obviously, by the time graduation rolls around, I don't have enough credits. I never graduated high school. I had to go to summer school to do the additional credits and get my high school diploma. My high school diploma was handed to me by a janitor. See, I never wanted anybody to know that because that was embarrassing because everyone else had a college degree. So when I hit my professional career, I realized that if my resume showed up and said JeVon McCormick, you were going to judge me. But if I went by JT McCormick, you didn't know who that was. And I only wanted to be judged on my character. Did I have an insane work ethic? Did I treat everybody with respect? And do I dress nice? That was for me. And so, going into my career, many people have thought, oh, wow, where'd you get your MBA? Where'd you get your degree? And I'll own it. Because again, I've not lived a fully authentic life. If you thought I had a degree, great. Think I had a degree. I can't tell you how many times people have thought I was Puerto Rican, Mexican. On the drive here, the driver asked me if I was Armenian. I was whatever I needed to be to get to wherever I needed to go. But I wasn't fully authentic. So I decided I was going to do my book. I was president of a software company. I was traveling a lot, and I don't like to fly, and I hit a lot of turbulence. And I thought to myself, oh, damn, if something happened to me, my children would not know where I came from. My children would not know that we don't know where our last name comes from. So I set out to write my book. I got introduced to the 2 co-founders of Book in a Box, and they said, yeah, you kind of got a book. But I said, here's the deal. I don't want my book to be public. I just need 5 copies for my kids and my great-great-grandkids. And the co-founder of our company has sold millions of books. And he looks at me and he goes, that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that. And I go, well, because I don't want anyone to know my story. And as they started reading my story, they started asking me questions about how to run their company. And they quickly realized, they're like, wow, can you be an advisor? Yeah, why not? Hey, would you be our CEO? Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. I was the president of a software company. I don't write code. I'm the CEO of a publishing company, and God knows I can't tell you an adverb from a pronoun. Damn sure can't spell, and I still want to meet the man or woman who invented spell check because they have been incredible in my career. So into this, and I'll wrap up, into doing my book, my father passed away. I had not seen my father in 30 years. I had not been back to Dayton, Ohio in 30 years. This is one of my favorite pictures because many people would think, yeah, JT, that's kind of a bullshit story. This is me at my father's funeral. I don't know if you can see this, but these are real pimps. 1970 pimps. You gotta love the guy here with the pink cuffs and the pink shoes to match. You gotta love the all red outfit right there. My only regret is there were about 35 pimps at this funeral, and I wish I would have had a picture with all of them, because there was lime green, there was yellow, it was incredible. So I'm asked now, JT, what's the one thing you would share with someone and give life advice? There's not one thing. I've ended up living by a formula. Mindset, choices, and hard work equals success. And I'll share this with you. Mindset. Every day I get up at 4 a.m. I'm human. There's many times I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. I want to stay in bed with my wife. I want to go to sleep. But then I think to myself, there is a 15-year-old kid, true story, who's traveled 1,000 miles to cross the border from Mexico into Texas. And when he crossed the border, all he got was, great, you made it in the country. He still needed to go find a big city to get a job. He still needed to eat. He still needed to find shelter. The way I look at life is, hell, I'm already here. I've got an advantage that I don't have to go cross a border. So that's my mindset each day. Choices. I'll own this. Many people won't. I love McDonald's, damn it. Okay? Every day on the way to the gym, I have to make a choice. Do I go to McDonald's or do I go to the gym? Not gonna lie, McDonald's wins sometimes. But it's that simple. Mindset, choices, and will hard work, that one's easy for me. I come from a background of chaos, and I always swore to myself I would never let anyone outwork me. Now listen to what I said, outwork me. Not work harder. A ton of people work harder than me. Outwork me, results driven. Mindset, choices, and hard work equals success. Last thing for me. I've often sat back and I've said to myself, why did those things happen to me? Why did that prostitute, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, why did she make me go down on her and slap me in the head and tell me to do it right when I did it wrong? I was 6 years old. What the hell is do it right? Why did that happen to me? Why was I born into a pimp father and an orphan mother? And here's what I realized. I can't change the past. I can't change the fact that my father was a pimp, my mother was an orphan. But here's what I can change. I can change the next hour. I can change the next week. I can change the next month and year. So I was going to be damned if I was going to dwell on my past and let it stop me from being successful. I've been incredibly fortunate that I've taught myself balance sheets, income statements, scale, growth, and how to build a company. I've been incredibly blessed that I taught myself how to invest in the stock market, and I've made a ridiculous amount of money that I'm still waiting to see if somebody's going to come back and pick it up. But of everything I've ever done, everything that I will ever do in this world, I will never be more proud than this. That's my family. I did not repeat the cycle. Thank you. So I once said this in a speech that I didn't repeat the cycle. I have 3 children, not 23 children like my father. But I can't say that anymore because that's my little girl right there. She's 4, he's 3, she's 1, and we got another one due in November. Scale a company, scale a family. I appreciate you all listening, and I ask of you, be authentic. Thank you.